Hello and welcome everyone. As you join, if you just want to take a second to share your role and where you're joining us from today, we'll give everyone a few minutes to join. We're really excited to present to you PhET's K-2 math simulations, and we'll get started here shortly. I'll go ahead and demonstrate here too.
All right. Excellent. K-2 teacher from Maine.
Yeah. Excellent.
Awesome. Welcome. You want to move to the next slide here? We'll get started. As you join, please feel free to drop into the chat where you're joining us from and your role. Just want to share a few housekeeping items before we get started, that today's session will be recorded, and we'll be sharing out the recording link along with the slide deck before the end of the day tomorrow. As you participate, there's a lot of interactivity in today's presentation. So as you participate, just a couple notes. If you're using the chat tool, that is a public record, so it will be available in that recording. And then if you have questions specifically for our panelists and presenters today, please use the Q&A tool. That's that little icon there that's indicated. We'll be reserving some time near the end to answer those questions for our presenters. So I am very excited to present to you David Woodward, who leads Forefront Education. He's both the founder and president of Forefront Education. Before joining the company that he founded full-time, he's had a variety of roles over 3 decades of experience in education, starting as a preschool Montessori teacher, ranging to the district elementary math specialist at Boulder Valley School District. He's wearing 2 hats today, both president of Forefront Education and as a lead author on the open source Universal Screeners for Number Sense project. And over the past few weeks, I've had the pleasure of getting to know better Kathy Carter. Kathy Carter leads a physics education technology initiative, or works with the Physics Education Technology Initiative at the University of Colorado at Boulder. Its acronym is PhET. She currently leads a data and statistics simulation design and is also involved with Teacher PD. She holds a ED in educational studies with a focus in mathematics education and a minor in statistical research methods, an MA in teaching and curriculum, a BS in mathematics, and a BS in computer science engineering. She joins PhET with the experience of over 2 decades of teaching in secondary mathematics and 10 years of developing and facilitating Teacher PD. She's also from Colorado. We're all Colorado natives here, and enjoys spending her free time outside.
I'm actually from Michigan, I would say. I moved here about, I don't know, 14 years ago or so.
Oh, Colorado native.
Almost. I'd like to be, but I'm a Michigan native.
All right.
So
Yeah,
we're going to start. Yeah. Oh, sorry, David.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay. And yes, PhET Interactive Simulations does indeed stand for physics. It was started, you can actually go to the next slide, David. Thanks. It was actually started in 2002 by Carl Wyman. He was a physics professor at the University of Colorado, and he won a Nobel Prize. So he used his Nobel money to start PhET, and he vowed to make it free for all users all the time. So that's what PhET stands for. But since in those 20 years, we have expanded to physics, chemistry, math, earth science, biology, statistics, some space, solar system things. We have sims, we have over 170 sims, 115, which are all HTML5. Because we started in 2002, of course, it was built in Java and Flash. So we haven't converted all of them over yet, but we have over 3,600 teacher created and shared with us activities that are free for use for everybody. We're translated into 100+ languages. They can be run online or offline. We are very committed to equity and access for all learners, regardless if they have connectivity at home. You can go to the next slide. We're research-based, so being based out of the university, we definitely draw on the current education research, regardless of what subject we're designing Sims in. We also do student and teacher interviews. If you are interested in being a part, you can always email us and you can be a part of our interview team. Before we publish, based on the interviews, we make sure that buttons are found, concepts are elevated appropriately, and then we redesign until it's about a year from idea till publishing when they finally get to our website. Some examples of some research that we've done and others have done for us. This was a 4th grade classroom, and those yellow bars are the pre-test scores in October on a Friday. In 4 days of the following week, PhET sims were used on fractions, just our fraction sims with no other interventions whatsoever by the teacher or by anybody else. And these were single 20 to 30 minute lessons, 1 per day, Monday through Thursday. And then the following Friday, so literally the study was Friday to Friday, 1 week. The post-test scores on both procedural knowledge and conceptual knowledge significantly increased, as you can see, in just 4 days, 20 to 30 minutes. So this is how impactful being able to interact with simulations can be. And then not only is information, procedural knowledge, and conceptual knowledge elevated, but also, on the next slide, is that the way students interact with each other and mathematics changes as sims are used. This study, it was in a 6th grade classroom, and I know we're in K-2, but I really believe that this is a powerful study that was done. For the same teacher, the same classroom, same group of kids, when the teacher was using a lesson that did not use a sim, the researchers noticed that the students were practicing standard procedures, recalling facts, appealing to rules. But when they used a sim, they were exploring new math ideas, they were inventing strategies, they were collaborating, so that the way that students interact with each other in math really shifts as well. And then I think the next slide is yours.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll transition just a little bit about Forefront, but I just wanted to emphasize, this idea of these sims and how well they really match with these ideas of number sense, and this idea of exploring how numbers work and seeing the connections amongst the different ideas. The sims that I've worked with have really been excellent at that. So just a little bit here about Forefront is that we are, as a company, we have a variety of different projects going on, but our core project is this assessment data solution that puts classroom assessments at the very center of school and district work. So we are about trying to make sure that we have meaningful assessments and meaningful assessment information in the hands of teachers to improve practice on a day-to-day basis. We support schools across 30 U.S. states and 6 countries, and we collect and analyze learning data for hundreds of thousands of students at this point in time. And just really try to support all of the leaders and from the top of the district on down and from the teachers on up in really making the most out of their assessment information. And part of that project then is the Universal Screeners for Number Sense. So these are interview-based paper and pencil assessments that are designed to really help teachers understand students' number sense. It is an open source project. That is, these things are available free for your download, and you can use them. And they are used in over 9,000 schools in the United States and internationally at this point in time. So really a huge kind of thing here. But this idea of listening to students is really very much at the core of this program. We also have, as part of the program, once you are within Forefront, we provide the data and visualization systems, but are also provide what we call our next steps documents, and that's what we're really going to be focusing on today, because the PhET sims that we're going to be discussing are tagged in several of the Universal Screeners for Number Sense questions, and so just want to dig in a little bit deeper about how to use these excellent resources once you have your assessment results. So we're going to jump in real quickly here into Forefront and talk a little bit about the mid-year screeners and just to demo just a little bit of what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and hop out here and into a district report. So now I'm here in a report that shows the results of the mid-year screeners that we got from this school year. And within this, you'll notice that we have a couple of questions here right at the very beginning. One of them is a count to 30 question. Let me hear you count from 30. Let me hear you count from 17. Okay, if you can't do that, then we'll start counting from 8. So if the student, is not successful, then we've got some students who are unable yet to count to 20. And those are the kids that are down there in that bottom section. Almost 10% of students at the middle of kindergarten still unable to count to 20, with the end of the school year expectation being that they can count to 100. So clearly something that we need to focus on here. But then I wanted to point out then within the same information here is the next steps documents. So this will tie you straight to these instructional suggestions. And you'll notice that the first of those is the number play app from PhET. We also have this same number play app that is tagged here in this reading numerals. So we're checking to see whether students can read their numerals to 20. Students who are still in the kind of orange area here are unable to read their numbers to 10 yet. And so that's about 10% of students once again. So thinking about these students who are already within the first few months of kindergarten showing us that we need to do a little bit more to help them to get on track, so that they don't fall behind early on. And that's why I wanted to make sure that Kathy has a chance to explain. And I'm going to go ahead and let you share now, Kathy, how the number play app works.
All
Sim,
right.
sorry.
Yeah, David calls it an app, but we'll talk about how to access it. It's actually, we call it a simulation because when we think of the word app, we think of something you download from App Store or something, which you can, but that's not our primary way to access. So the first thing is we're going to actually allow you and encourage you to play, with the sim. And what I meant to do, oh my goodness gracious, I'm trying to actually just grab the link here. And so what you're going to do is you're going to play. We want you to play with the simulation. If I can grab the link, copy link. Here we go. And we are going to ask you to play because the best way to interact is, or the best way to understand what it does is just to interact with it. So I just put a link in the chat. I also want to mention as you're getting in, this is what you're going to see when you click the link. When you are interacting with this, I do want to mention that we do have simulations from kindergarten through college. So we are focusing on kindergarten through second. I see a lot of chat members that support more than just kindergarten through second grade. So we do have sims for kindergarten through college. So as you play, you'll notice that there are different what we call screens. So you can pick one screen. If you pick one, you'll see that you have access to them down here at the bottom. So you can change your scene, your screen, to different things. So I'm going to encourage you to play around for a couple minutes and put in the chat, what are you, I'm sorry, I did not do that correctly. 1 second.
I got you there. Yes, we have to share it with everyone. So we just shared that link in the chat.
Thanks, sorry. A question about, are these accessible to kids who are blind? We do have an accessibility team that works. I'm one of the designers to design the Sims to make sure that the math concepts and standards are elevated. And so we have an accessibility team. We do have, for example, contrast checkers. We have screen readers. We have cues. There are lots of different ways. Not all of our Sims have accessibility features, but later on, I'll show you how to filter our sim page to find the ones that are accessible.
All right, so just as you're playing around in the app, you might want to, if you see something that draws your eye and your attention, just go ahead and put it into the chat for us here and see what you see.
Give you about 30 more seconds. It's a lot. So you would not give your students only 30 seconds to play. You would give them about 5 minutes minimum. And then what you do is you share accessibility is Can you say a little bit more about that, Carlton? We have a lot of accessibility features. Do you mean like,
So
okay, maybe
I
we
like
can,
how
you
you
can
can
add that in
hide
there.
things.
I like how you
Hmm.
can hide things. I suppose I want to show the numeral, but have them hide the 10 frame. They can check their work after they finish. So probably what you're noticing is when you put one object onto the screen, another one flies up. And so you have the 10 frame that you can show and hide. You have the word that you can show and hide. If you have your sound on, you can, I don't think I shared the sound, but you can actually press this button over here and you can hear the word. So the question is, why aren't all Sims accessible for disabled students? So the answer is, it takes a lot of time and intentionality to actually design the accessibility features for the sim. And a lot of our sims were created many years ago before accessibility was on our radar. So we have been working hard to update our older sims, and we're working, all of our new sims have accessibility features, but some of the older ones don't. So that's why we don't have that. Anything else you want to add to the chat? If not, I can certainly point out some things.
You know, one of the things that I've been impressed is when using these with students in class and doing kind of like the same thing that we're doing here with just allowing everyone to kind of play, is letting the students play with this thing and then allowing them to talk about what they're finding and what they're seeing and discovering. It's really interesting to as someone who my early work, a lot of it was in within bilingual education and working with students who are still learning to speak English, which is really all students in kindergarten especially, and just getting them to say, "Oh, there's a lot of ones there. Well, how many ones?" And when I click the up arrow, that it adds one more, and that adds one more to each side. These kinds of words, trying to get students to actually explain what they are doing and what they're seeing, is within itself an opportunity to learn mathematical language, and I think super important.
I'm glad you mentioned that, David, because down here in the settings, if you haven't found this, in the simulation tab, you can actually turn on a second language. And when you turn on a second language, you can choose your speaker for some languages. So, for example, I'm going to turn my sound off so that it's not distracting. But basically, what you see now is you see a toggle up here. You see English and Spanish. So in real time, I can change the language. So if students are coming in non-native English speakers, they can choose their language and they can pop back and forth so that they can begin to learn that language using their own language as the basis for that. So I hope you notice that you can move these around, and I hope you notice that you can either press the arrows or I can just drag one of the objects from the bin, either the puppy or the one. And you can also use these up and down arrows over here to add objects. This is overwhelming to me. I don't know about you, but your students might say, oh my gosh, there's a lot of objects. How the heck am I supposed to see that? So I can move the 10 frame. Yep. And just someone in the chat also noticed that you can organize them by 10 frames to encourage the importance of organizing to help make counting more efficient. I also hope you notice that I can actually drag one of these and make two. I can drag another one and make two. I can put two and two together and make four. So as I'm learning how to compose and decompose numbers, we see that there's a lot of flexible ways. There are a lot of flexible ways to be thinking about these numbers, and I can put them all together into a single number. I also hope you notice that you can see the 0 behind this 6 to really reinforce place value. And I can move this 6. Oh, I decomposed it by accident. So you click on the handle and you can move these one at a time, or I can move them as a group. And I can decompose this by place value if I'd like. And you might wonder, and I've seen students do this in our student interviews, after they figure out you can put the ones together, they try to do this and they try to put the puppies together. And I always ask them what they expect to happen, if it's going to turn into a number 2. And I get some interesting answers. So hopefully, as someone just pointed out in the chat, you can change the contexts to whatever their favorite object is. These buttons over here, so what we know from research is that people and students and adults tend to go from the upper right to the lower left, especially if their language is in that direction. And so they usually go this way and then down. So we intentionally scaffold our Sims to have students press these buttons in order. So if I press this button, I see the butterflies are still there. They're still organized in exactly the same way, but now there's a card behind them. And I might say, oh, that's interesting. So now I press, and now I get the 2 that I might have been expecting when I dragged a butterfly onto itself. As I move all the butterflies here, I can still combine them, and oh, wow, I now have 10 plus 1 more, and I can still have all of these on my card. So now what does 16 mean? Here I have 6, here I have 6. Maybe you're wondering, well, I don't want to have to move the sides independently. So this lock button, suddenly, if I can grab it, suddenly, as I move 1, the others move 2 to really reinforce that 1-to-1 correspondence as students are learning how to count from 1 to 20. So here we have 1 butterfly, we have another butterfly. What happens if I put this butterfly on here? How many butterflies am I going to have? 2. So we really have that powerful 1-to-1 correspondence. I'm sure that you found a couple more things. Of course, the students will love the game. I will show you how to filter that game out from the URL if you do not want your students playing the game, or maybe you want them only playing the game. I'll show you how to customize the URL so that you can do that later on. And then the lab screen is really a storyboard. Stories are so important in other cultures. They're important when learning math. They're just important to help students feel connected to the mathematics that they're learning. So this is a great way to have students tell a story. You could say, hey, I had 5 apples and somebody took 2 away. How many apples am I going to have? And they might decide, okay, well, here's 5. They might actually put 2 over here or something, or match up the 2, and maybe they'll put a 2 over here. Students are so creative, and to see them in action, to create solutions to the stories is just so exciting and rewarding to see their creativity. Okay. Any other comments before we move on to a lesson? Okay, so you probably saw that the Sims are highly interactive. We have an intuitive interface. Pedagogically powerful actions means essentially that we can do things in a Sim that you can't do with paper and pencil, including, like combining the ones. When you see multiple accurate and dynamic representations, they're all linked together. So the 10 frame, the number, the objects, they all sync up and they update dynamically with different representations of the word, the symbol, an organization structure, a numeral, and objects all update dynamically to make strong connections using different representations. I mentioned we have implicit scaffolding with the way that the buttons are organized, and these screens down here, starting with 10 to 20 to the game to the lab. And so we're going to go through an example. What do you do with this cool tool? You have this amazing tool. What do you do, and how do you use it to improve number sense so that we can connect to what David was saying, where students are struggling to count to 20 or count to, starting on or counting on a number. So oops, wrong way. So this is a lesson that can help you get a sense of what you can do with this powerful tool. So the concepts included in this lesson are cardinality, conservation of cardinality, 1-to-1 correspondence. We can talk about the commutative property. All of these are counting principles. There's another one that is known to be a counting principle called the successor, which is the next number, like 7 goes to 8. And this also elevates that, but really these 4 are highlighted here. So I'm going to model this lesson together. And the 10 screen has a maximum of 10 and the 20 has a maximum of 20. So you could choose which screen to use. So the way that this lesson works and what we've noticed in classrooms is that kids aren't automatically in tune to the one-to-one correspondence of each of the playing fields. So for example, if I put a puppy up, suddenly, wait, what? And students will say, how did that one get there? Or you might say, how did that one get there? I didn't touch anything over here. What the heck happened? All I did was put a puppy up there. What do you think is going to happen if I put another puppy up there? And then the students might say, another one? And you say, let's find out. And so then I go like this, and you say, oh my gosh, you were right. How many puppies total are there? 2. You can hide this if you don't want them to see the numeral right away. You can keep this open to reinforce that the 10 frame is being filled. Now that we have 2, you could do this or not, however you want to help your students connect to the one-to-one correspondence. You can move over here then and say, what's going to happen when I put up another 1 over here? I didn't touch that puppy. I did not do that. And it just kind of came up there. And the students are going to be like, oh my gosh. And so, what happens if I put another 1 and another 1? And I'm going to go all the way up to 10. I'm on the 10 screen, so that's the max. You can see this button grays out. Just to verify, which you'll want to do with your students, is, are you sure there's 10? Are you sure there are 10 ones? Are you sure there are 10 puppies? How do you know? And have them really come back to you with reasons for how you know there are 10. Then, as we put this together as an example, and I'm probably going to lock this so that we can have our matching numbers and animals or objects. What if I put these 10 puppies into 2 groups? How many puppies could I put in each group? And then you give the students the freedom to explore, or you do one example, like right now I have only one group of 10. What happens if I move 1 out? Now I have one group of 9 and one group of 1. What other groups can I make? And then they start to explore, because we know that in the standards, there are several standards around 10 for, place value, it's nice to move through and count through 10. And the students will come up with creative ways to think about this. You can then talk about, well, if I put 8 over here and 2 over here, is it still 10? Are you sure it's still 10? And maybe you want to hide that, but keep this. Or maybe you want to hide them both. Or maybe you want to keep the word open if you're going to be talking about how to say it, speak it, write it. So as the students are going, they might realize that as I take 1 away from here, 1 is added. As this one goes down by 1, this one goes up by 1. And then you can instantly talk about the commutative property, and you have a visual connection to it as well. So in this lesson, you would really first have to establish a strong connection between the one-to-one. And as the students are playing, they're building really a very strong sense of number and how that works. This lesson is designed to support one-to-one. The number 10 can be decomposed in many ways, and they can come in pairs. And of course, you could apply this same logic to any number. I'll show you where to find this lesson later on in the webinar. And then I'm going to stop sharing.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And honestly, I had a really interesting experience one time working with a second grade student. Teacher was attempting to teach them make a 10 strategy. And we were trying to work with some different numbers, and I realized that I could have out 2 and I was working with manipulatives, but that I could have 2 piles of objects, and if I moved one to the other pile, that the student was not certain that the total quantity hadn't changed. And the teacher in the classroom is talking about, well, I'm going to take 2 from the 5 and give it to the 8 and make a 10, and now I got 13. And this child didn't really know what was going on. He thought it was just completely magic, and we had to count this over and over and over again. I think that this is one of these things that just kind of gets overlooked sometimes in our teaching, that students really don't have that kind of solid understanding of cardinality, that if I change ones and just move one from one group to the other, that the total quantity doesn't change. So that's a real issue. Let me go ahead.
The fact that they have in a group the objects on the right-hand side, you can still count them one at a time and touch them if you want, and confirm that really that numeral indeed does represent that quantity.
Awesome. So we're going to move on to first grade now. These are, once again, the results from the first grade screening in the middle of the year here this year. And I'm going to focus in particular here on question F3, which has to do with finding unknowns under 10. So Kathy was just we were just talking quite a bit about 10. These numbers are only going up lower than 10 actually. But really what this is about, and I think it's a really ambitious standard. I'm not sure, sometimes it really gets overlooked, this idea that the equal sign means the equal sign and that we can have unknowns in all places. And it's quite tricky for students to answer questions like these. But once again, this is one of those that I tagged in the next steps documents, and I tagged two apps in on this one, both the Equality Explorer and the Number Compare apps. And Kathy, maybe you can give us a quick tour of what those apps can do.
You mean Sims?
Sims, oh my goodness. If I don't, I'm so used to
It's
talking.
okay. It's okay. It happens a lot. Okay. So as David mentioned, we have a variety of Sims, and this one is actually tagged for middle and high school. And so we chose it so that you could see that when you learn how to filter Sims for a specific grade band, make sure that you explore others, because we might actually find a very important connection to something, even though it may not be what the standards, say that they include. Sorry, I was getting the link as I was speaking. And so just like before, you're going to click on that link and you're going to see now this screen, and you can see there are variables and operations. These are the screens you probably won't want. So I'll definitely show you how to filter those out. But as David was saying, some of the missing add-end problems can be quite a struggle or quite a mystery on how to solve. So play around with this, and we'll talk through how you might want to use this in your classrooms, even though this is slated for upper, middle, and high school.
I just find that there's so many that can be used across different grade levels for different concepts, and this idea of equality here is just one that I think has so much potential for our younger students as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what we try to do is we encourage you to let your students free play without any guidance whatsoever. And the goal of that free play is we have a lot of different goals of that free play, and we've found a lot of benefits from the free play. We call it open play. And basically what happens is the students start to feel like experts of the sim. You're not the only expert in the room, according to them, as they're playing. And so they feel like they're the experts. They start talking to each other, they start collaborating more. And then they start building that agency of, I know how to do that. I want to do it. Let me show you how to do it. I figured that out. So as they're playing with no goal, and I guess the only goal is to figure out how the sim works and find cool features of the sim, you'll notice that very few, if any, of our sims have explicit instructions. As you open the sim, there's no panel that just pops into your face and makes you read how to use the sim. So we really want our sims to be interactive and encourage you to play and figure it out. And students are very, very good at not being shy to explore a sim. So if you're not quite sure how the sim works, I'll show you as a teacher or a teacher supporter how you can find a way, like what does the sim do? But students typically don't have a problem figuring it out. So I'm going to focus on this numbers screen because I definitely want to show you how to filter all of these out if you choose to. The basics has a number, but no negatives. And essentially you can figure out, how this scale can balance. And this symbol is very mysterious to children. In our interviews, a lot of students thought this was addition or subtraction, or they thought it was, like they were trying to subtract the two numbers. They weren't quite sure what to do with that symbol. So you might want to hide that, as that symbol can be quite confusing. And so here, just noticing that that isn't green, and it won't be green until you create a balance. So the same thing happens over here on the numbers screen. And if you find something cool in the chat, please do type it in the chat, because we definitely want to hear from you and what you're noticing. But I want to point out a couple things if you don't find that. Some of the features. So some of the things you might notice is that you could put these ones anywhere. If I try to drag one on top of each other, it just stacks. I can press this button and it will organize them for me. I can hit the lock button, and as I add one to one side, the other one does as well. And so this is a really nice way. The different shapes and fruits have different values. Yep, they do. And so it's your job to figure out what the values are. Again, we have different contexts, and each of these different contexts has different values for each of the objects. I also hope you notice that you can drag a negative one, and this sum or this inequality doesn't change. Again, if you have that hidden because that symbol might be a little bit too much. But you can see what happens. And I don't know if you noticed that, but I just saw a yellow thing pop up here. So as you're looking at this sim, you might think, what does that do? So I drag it over there and it creates a zero pair, really deeply reinforcing that when you have one and then you take one away, you're really creating nothing. You're creating zero. And so that's a powerful way to make those connections as the students are playing, and they will find that. They always do. This just clears the scale and puts it back to 0. So what we'd like for you to do is, one of the assessment questions that David pointed out was 3 plus what makes 5? So 3 plus what equals 5? Oops, sorry. How could you use this sim to answer questions like 3 plus what is 5? So take a few moments to think about how you might answer this question. If you want to type in the chat what you're noticing, or I don't know, can we have people speak or?
No, we can't let them speak because we're in the webinar mode, but in the chat would be great. But one of the things, I look at this thing and I see like that basics one that you've got there off to the left, and this kind of tool, I could just, I think we're focusing primarily on these students who are really kind of struggling with these kinds of things, but at the same time, what a wonderful extension for a student who might want to explore these ideas, that I'm not sure which there's got to be inequality in there somewhere,
Mhm.
but to have them play with it, and figure out maybe that I don't know what it would be, 2 apples equals a lemon or something. I'm not sure where that is, but
I know the lemon and the apples are pretty heavy, and they'll notice things like that and say that, giving them a sense of size and weight, which is really important for the number sense to get, well, when I put an apple there, this arrow moves really far. When I put a lemon, it moves even farther. But when I only put an orange, it really doesn't move it that much. Even that type of noticing is important for number sense.
I used to this idea of equality and a balanced scale is such a powerful image and an idea, which is why I was really drawn to this one. I have tried to use balance scales in instruction. In fact, I've got a balance scale sitting right up there that's kind of a very kind of remedial one. And the problem was, as we were trying to do this, that finding things that were consistent enough in weight to really express that idea was very difficult, and it was a little cumbersome to try to figure these things out. And so it's just nice to have, you talked about how it's kind of better than paper on that last app. This one that last sim. This one also is a little bit better than reality in some ways, just because it's so precise and it's so easy to work with, that you could quickly and easily manipulate this thing.
Mm-hmm. And if you would like to share your solution, you can raise your hand and we can pass you the mic. So
Oh, we can. Okay.
if you are interested in sharing what you are thinking about on how you might solve 3 plus what is 5, please do feel free to raise your hand. The average wait time teachers have is about 5 seconds. And if I wait more than that, it becomes uncomfortable. So I will wait a couple more moments and make it uncomfortable if anybody wants to speak. Okay, place 3 on one side, and 5 on the other. Does it matter which side I put it on, or do you have a preference on which
That's a
side?
good question. Does it matter? No.
Oh, I don't know. I noticed that the scale doesn't balance though. Then what? So if I model this and we want to say 3 plus what equals 5, we've got a couple different ways we can visualize this. We can visualize it by noticing, that I can stack these and make it, I guess I can stack them this way and say, oh, I've got a stack of 3, a stack of 3, they match. But I've got these two over here that are by themselves and I can't do anything with that. So I could do, oh, it turned green. So now I say, oh, how many did I add? I added 5. I could go backwards and say, well, if I'm looking for 3 plus what is 5, I could start with 5 on both sides. And I could say, how many am I taking away? I have to take away 1, 2. So that means working backwards that 3 plus 2 must be 5. So there are different ways that you could use this scale. If you stack them, you can do this. On some of these other screens, just so that you know, one thing you can do, maybe this one, as I put this on, I can make 2, 3, and then you can make 5. The only problem is that it has variables, So if you want the numerals on there, I could add 2 more and I can't separate them. So you'd have to be very careful about keeping track of how many you have, or you could make it more concrete and say, oh, look, these have the same height, but this one's too higher. So there are a couple different ways that we can do that. Questions or comments about that and how that can connect to what David's assessments are finding on specific questions that students are struggling with? Okay.
There is a question. It's not directly related to this, but in the chat, I just wanted to bring it to your attention and just sharing that there's another platform in place in this district, iReady, and students are asked to pass 3 lessons in both reading and math and have a minimum of 45 minutes in each subject per week. So it's feeling like this would be kind of overwhelming of adding on this additional tool. So how could you implement that without the student feeling bored or overwhelmed?
Yeah, so one of the things that we actually encourage, and when we get to our website here, one of the things that we encourage is, for example, if you want students to play with number play, which I will show you later, on this about page, we have both sample learning goals to give you ideas on giving the students some guiding questions. We also have these teaching resources that has a PDF. And this PDF can give you, for example, I'll go through this later. These come from our interviews, but we also have sample challenge prompts. And so if you don't know quite what to do with it, and you give the student a sim like number play, and you're watching them play and they're like, well, what else can I do with it? And then they get bored. Here are some sample challenge prompts that you can ask your students to try to solve so that it gives them a focus for what they're actually exploring without having a full lesson. If that's one way that you can engage with this and engage your students. I'll show you how to get here.
Yeah. And as you transition, I'll just add on to that, and first of all, I think, I mean, obviously you want to make sure that you're providing engaging stuff, and just kind of forcing, and trying to extend this as long as possible is probably not the best idea. You want to just use it strategically, right, to make sure that you're emphasizing the ideas that you want to emphasize. But one of the other things I think that is really important in these PhET sims that I've always appreciated is that they can work so well as a collaborative tool. When you have 2 or 3 kids doing it together, working together, talking about it together, when students are engaged together, they tend to sustain their interest and to sustain their attention much better. Oftentimes, in a lot of the online learning platforms that I have witnessed in classrooms, students are stuck there with headphones on, and they are individualized, and they are isolated. And yes, students will zone out. They will start thinking about different things. They will oftentimes get trapped in kind of little loops where they're not really making any progress. It's quite frustrating, honestly, watching those things in class. I think it's really important when we're working with tools like these PhET sims that we're really allowing students to talk, engage with one another, and really work through problems in ways that are collaborative.
Yeah, that's a good point. And students also love making up stories about what they're seeing. Oh, there were three puppies and they went to the store and they had to go pick up their friends. And they'll make up some things. You can hide these as well. And the students can challenge each other, create a challenge. How many, if I make this up and I put three groups, they could have, you know, they could challenge each other and their partner, they could say, well, when I open this, how many puppies am I going to see? And then maybe their partner could try to count, or maybe they could decompose and say, oh, well, that numeral 5 actually means 5-1. So I know I'm going to have 5 puppies, and then I'm going to have 2 more, and then 3 more, or maybe you have 4 groups or something. And so the students really challenge each other as they're collaborating, and they love telling stories. They absolutely love it. The kids are so creative as they make things up and challenge each other to solve problems that they create. So yeah, that's a good point. Okay, we're gonna go to a third sim, and this sim is called Number Compare. This sim is a sister sim to Number Play. You'll notice a lot of similar features. It isolates the comparison of numbers. So your job, as before, is to figure out how the simulation works, what features you find interesting, unique, pedagogically powerful. Feel free, we would love to hear some ideas in the chat about what you're noticing, maybe similar and different than you found in Number Play. And when you get to Number Compare, this is the screen that you should see. And I'll just click on this and give you a few moments to figure out how the sim works, and maybe type a couple things in the chat.
And this is definitely a favorite of mine. Love this one. We have a number of questions on the screeners, none in the mid-year that I found, at least not in K2, but that deal with comparison problems, dealing with this idea of which one is bigger and how much more, or which one is more, and how much. This question of how much more, that is a problem that is really, really difficult for students. It's supposedly something that's first grade in terms of the way that students are, in terms of the standards, but it is also one that is very, very difficult to achieve. And I have found third and fourth graders that are still struggling with this idea of difference and this question, and answering this question of how much more. So this is a really, I think, a great tool for thinking about and playing with ideas of comparisons.
Mm-hmm. So there's a note in the chat about the number line between the two boxes of objects, and to see the bar graph in the middle. So somebody figured out up here in our scaffolding that the bar model is in the middle, and then you can switch it to the number line and you can see some triangles for pointing to the numbers that you have over here. Unlike Number Play, you probably noticed that I can have different numbers on both sides, whereas in Number Play, they actually, it was forced to be the one-to-one correspondence. You can still organize these independently. You notice these are cards. There's no lock feature because they're not equal on both sides. So you can create cards with these. You can compare different objects. You can compare the same object. You can see up here, you can also add or subtract objects from the top. You can see this sentence right here. And if you press this horn or megaphone or something,
8 is greater than 6.
you can see and hear the phrase. You can also turn that off, and notice when I turn it off, that button goes gray so that you can't interact with it since there's nothing to read. So, so here we have 8 is greater than 6. You can hear that read. Like I said, in student interviews, they were really trying to make sense of that symbol. We interviewed a kindergartner and a first grader, and both students were really struggling to make sense of that symbol. So you're definitely going to need to have intentional connecting to this symbol. And the recommendation is to start with that off so that the students can actually get a sense of what the sim is, what it does, what these things in the middle mean before you introduce symbols like that. This was brought up because number one, it's a sister sim of number play, but also we had this really important question of 3 plus what gives you 5. So in number compare, we can also model that same question. And so how could we model that same question using this sim? And you might want to have the same objects, but that's up to you if you want the same question. Hopefully you can see some applications on how you can see that there are 3 plus what gives you 5, and there are many opportunities for you to actually answer that question using the sim. If you don't want any graph in the middle, you can also turn that completely off. Like before, you can see that you can add 2 more, and we could separate these and match them 1 to 1, left to right. We could group them and match them like this, and you could say, well, I started with 3, how many more do I need? And you can just point to that group of 2. You can also notice this bar graph in the middle. You're going to have to do some very, very, very intentional grounding with this sim, where you say, for example, here I have, even and odd. You can have even and odds pairing up, absolutely, with 1 left over. Great idea. So we have this butterfly here, and you're going to have to say, like, if I start the sim over, this orange button over here is a reset all button. So if I pull 1 puppy up, you say, just like before, I didn't put that purple square there, but when I put a puppy there, there was a purple square there. And then maybe if you have, a couple puppies, you say, how many puppies do I have over here and how many purple squares are there? How many puppies do I have here and how many squares are there? And once you build that very strong connection and 1-to-1 to the number of squares and the number of objects over here, that really gives you an opportunity to dig into this question. 3 plus what equals 5. So if we go back to that, you can answer that question here as well. Notice when I press this button, the puppies come out of their card of group and they create a 10-frame organization structure. And we can turn that off right there. Oops, that's 2, not 3. And so notice too, for this, you also have the second language. You also have automatically here the number sentence. This is also true in number play. I'll show you that. You can also change the localization. So when I turn on a second language, it's not English and it's whatever 2 languages you want. So if I change my localization to, let's say, be Spanish in Mexico, and then I go back, notice it instantly translated the whole sim. And then let's say that I want also
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
Jacques. So now when I go back, now instead of English and, now I have Spanish and French. So you can choose whatever 2 languages you want. And so when I show this,
3 est plus petit que 5.
I'm on auto here. So now when I add an object,
4 est plus petit que 5.
it automatically reads it for me. And like I said, this is in number play too. So when I turn that auto here feature on,
5 est égal à 5.
it counts for you 1, 2, 3 in the language that you prefer. And so you could start at 8, like David said, and count on from 8. If you already have 8 objects there, and then you add 1 more, it'll say 9 automatically for you. You can also hide these panels and say, well, I have 5 over here. It's my mouse, not the sim. And so these are 5 and 5. How many objects would I expect over here? Or maybe you want to do this and focus solely on the graph in the middle. How many puppies do I have over here? How many squares do I have here? How many puppies should I expect to see when I open this? And so you can really help them build that connection even stronger. Students are very creative, as I've mentioned many times before. I loved hearing from my students and the ideas that they would have. So here we have equal groups. We have, both of these are odd. You have 5, lots of different things that you can do with this. I'll show you later how you can customize the URL so that you change this max. So you don't have to have 20. That's a little overwhelming. You can have it stop. Maybe the number of the day is 13 or 5 or 8 or whatever. You can change this max and the number line will stretch to meet it up here. So I'll show you how to do that later. And again, we have a lab where you can customize just storytelling. And this is a great opportunity to engage your students in their storytelling and challenge each other to solve each other's problems with these added symbols that number play did not. Okay,
Awesome.
and now back to David.
Okay, yeah, just one last one here. So we've gone through and you know, I'm going through this and we've gone through kind of by grade level here. And you know, as I'm watching this whole thing, I'm thinking, okay, well, you know, these comparison things come in second grade, they come in third grade. I mean, it's just you can really, you know, think about how this could apply to a lot of different grade levels, not just the one particular application that we're talking about here. So this is the results of this year's second grade screener. There's a number of questions here, and so just to kind of a little bit more familiarity with the assessment itself, a lot of these are interview questions. So everything here that you see that says int 1 is an interview question. So counting from 198, for example. This next interview question is reading numerals, and that actually ties to this next sim that we're going to be looking at quite tightly. But also then I'm going to point out this one here, the interview question number 3. It's a mental math problem, 81 minus 2. Obviously, the results on here are you know, 70% of students approximately are able to solve 81, take away 2 at this point in the middle of second grade, but still having that 20% of students or so that are struggling with that problem, 20 to 30% really that are kind of struggling with that problem still. And so that's certainly an area for focus. But then as my eye goes across here, I notice that this question here, which is a fluency question. The F stands for fluency. The W's here are written questions. Oftentimes things like show me all the combinations of 13. Number play is obviously a great way to go through that first sim that we saw this evening. Would be a great way to do that. Kathy was talking about the family of 10 or Mr. 10, or I can't remember the name of that lesson.
Family of Mr. Tanya.
Yeah, but we can make it into Mr. 13, right? And do that exact same thing there. But then this largest bar over here that shows that only 41% of students, 42% of students are able to solve this is some basic place value addition problems. Students by the end of second grade are supposed to be able to solve addition and subtraction problems all the way up to 1,000 according to the standards when provided with time and manipulatives and ways to use place value. And yet here we are in the middle of second grade, and we've got anyone in the red here in these 2,000 students here was unable to solve 38 plus 6. Never mind questions like 52 plus 38, which would be, you know, 2 of the questions correct, 3, you know, and then all 4 of them. So only 42% of students able to solve all 4 of these. This question of place value is absolutely quintessential for second grade, and really, I think, becomes a problem that when addressed not in second grade quickly starts dragging kids down when they get into third grade and fourth grade, because they're supposed to be applying these things and suddenly multiplication comes along in third grade. Really got to pay attention to place value addition and subtraction in second grade. And so we're going to show off the Make a 10 app, once known as Snow Day Math.
Yeah. Okay. I also just, before we engage with this, if you did get the link to this webinar from the PhET monthly newsletter, you may have noticed that it said 8 to 9 Eastern time instead of 8 to 9:30. So if you got this webinar from that, we are going to go past this hour in the next minute. We won't wrap up in 1 minute. So if you do have to leave, of course, look for the recording no earlier than tomorrow. And make sure that you watch to the end, because I'll show you how to customize the URLs to make it work for your classroom. But we do encourage you to stay until we're done. So I do want to point that out. So in the chat, I've put Make a 10 link. And so this Make a 10 is all about composing and decomposing numbers within place value. So play around with it for a moment, just like before. Think about how students might interact with it, discover the features, how might this sim help students with place value. So those are sort of your guiding questions. And then this is the screen that you will see. you may notice very first that there's a hand with an arrow. Just like number play and number compare, you can decompose these numbers, and you will get that hand until you decompose. But if you notice, there's a line right here, and that line is as long as you click, and notice my cursor changes as I go between that line. If I click on the number above that in the gray or region, I can decompose, and if I hold it from the bottom, I can move it. We upgraded that interaction with number play and number compare to put the handle up top to make it more easily discoverable that you can decompose these. But so this sim we will eventually update and have that handle as well. But for now, this is make sure that you're in like the upper 40% if you want to decompose these numbers. And I'm gonna be willing to bet that some of you have tried to put numbers together multiple times, wondering why it's not working, and you keep doing it. I've seen teachers do it 15 times in a row and not just why is it broken? And so, which I find awesome because I did the same thing when I was playing with it. And so what you should probably realize is that this is called Make a 10. And so there's a reason why this sim is called Make a 10. So if you're struggling with that and starting to get frustrated, know that the way to put these together is to make a 10. And yes, you can add to get 12. So you may notice that you can hide this total down here. And you may also notice that now we're not confined to 20. And so you can put a bunch of numbers here, you can combine them by place value. Cool thing is, when you combine these, you can't do that. So you are forced to make a 10 or a multiple of 10 before you can combine these. You'll also notice that not only can I see a faint 0 right here behind the 10, but I can also see a faint 0 behind the 4 so that I can see, whoops, the 42 is on top of the 200 to really reinforce the difference between a 1 and a 2 next to each other and 12. Okay. This one has an adding screen where you can actually enter in the numbers. So I'm going to put this problem that David just described, 80, 81. Actually, I'm going to do this on this other screen. We're going to build, I'm decomposing. I don't mean to. You'll do that too. So we have 81. Your students will figure out how high it goes. And the goal is to do 81 minus 2. If I would take 1 away, and if I try to take another one away, a whole 10 comes out. And I wasn't expecting that. I was actually hoping that it was going to be 79 because I only wanted to take 1 away. But because this is by place value, when I take 1 away, I'm actually taking 110 away. So now I have to decompose that, put that back on, put the 2. So when I find 81 minus 2, I can actually extract the 2 and see that to make 81, I have to take 2 out, and I can see by place value that 79 is left. So that's a really nice, and I can't combine them unless I make a 10 again, 81. So you can count down, you can count up, or count on, count from, or you can compare. You could make, 2 sets of 71 and 2 sets of 79, and then have 2 more to make 81 and do a comparison model as well. Not as efficient, of course, but it could be done. And some of your students might do that too. Okay, any comments in the chat before we move to a problem I want you to try to solve?
I love one of the things that, this idea of tearing those numbers off and getting that backward number word sequence, I think is really one of the powerful things I've seen in this app. But the other thing I really love about this and thinking about subtraction with this, I know that it's really it works very, very well for addition, as we're going to see in just a second. But this inverse relationship of addition and subtraction becomes really clear within this thing. I had 81. I took off 2. I'm left with 79. I can still see that 2 there. Now I've got 79 and 2. How much is it all together? I can put that back together and see the 81 again. And trying to get students to see that connection between addition and subtraction is really powerful. And I think this sim works really, really well for that.
Especially because you can hide the total or not hide the total. And
Yep.
so you can really see that the 79 and the 2 that you extracted or took away from it really does make 81. So you see all three numbers at the same time when you have this unchecked to hide the total. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to engage with 38 plus 6. This is one of the assessment questions that David had that he just showed us with that F4. 38 plus 6. I think I said 2, but I meant 6. 38 plus 6. If you go to here on the adding screen and you click on this and you say 38 and then 6 here, you can have your 38 and 6 very, very quickly. And you can manipulate these, you can decompose them, you can stack them. So just take a couple moments to explore 38 plus 6, and then I'll offer also some ways that we can do that. Answering a question in the chat. Okay, so there's a question how I don't like how you can put these next to each other and make it look like 792. And so I just typed an answer in the chat, which is essentially, this is definitely something students need to know how to recognize and distinguish between, is it 792 or is it 79 and 2? And so really focusing on, well, can I see that number behind? If I can move one out and I can see the place value, when I move this, there's nothing behind it. And another thing, can I move this one independently? If so, it's not part of the 792 because what we have is this is not 700, it's 70. So really reinforcing how, yes, you can absolutely do that. And that's actually one of the lessons we have on our website for number play, which is it 12 or is it 1 and 2 put next to each other to make 3? And that's a lesson. It's called, what's it called? I can't remember what it's called. I'll show you when I look. But yes, that is definitely something that students might struggle with, but there are strategies to help distinguish between those two numbers. Okay, so perhaps you notice that you can break this apart by place value, and I might try to line it up like this. But if I move and decompose by place value, I can actually stack the units and how many there are of each place value. So if I try to add 8 and 6, of course, they're going to repel each other because they're not, wrong line, because they're not, they don't move through 10 intentionally. So maybe you want to actually take 2 from the 6 and make a 10, and then you say, oh no, it's in the wrong column, I better move it over. So now I have my place values, I can add them together and I can really create the 44 by place value just because I took 2 from the 6 and added it to the 8. I don't want to have to type these in again. So all I have to do, here's a little trick, is when I press that pencil, I just have to hit submit and it resets exactly back to where I started. So that's a little time saver where you don't have to enter in the numbers every single time. Perhaps instead, the students wanted to take 4 from the 8 and make 10 that way. That's perfectly fine. That still makes 44. Submit. Perhaps I didn't want to decompose it all and I just wanted to take 2 from there and make 44. because there are different ways that students can think about decomposing by place value, stacking place value. Maybe I wanted to have all the 10s together. Maybe I wanted to do, instead of taking 2 from the 8 or 4 from the 6, maybe I wanted to take enough to make a 5 and a 5 and then have 4 1s left over. Because there are different ways to actually put these together using the sim in creative ways, your students will end up finding a strategy that works for them. What I found in my work is allowing students to think about mathematics in their own way is so important, because we all think about math slightly differently. And so if we force students to use the traditional algorithm for addition, that can hinder students' sense of belonging, or in mathematics, a sense of ownership of their work. And so by allowing them to create their own strategies, they're actually creating their own algorithm, because they might say, oh, take some numbers from the smaller one and give it to the bigger one to make a 10 or something like that. And so by creating an algorithm doesn't mean that they have to use the traditional algorithm. So however they want to do it, definitely highlight, I would ask students to come to the front and share their strategy, maybe under a document camera or up at the front where the projected sim is, and they can model their strategy for the rest of the class. The more strategies you elevate, the more power you give to other students to try to find creative ones. And that's super important when you're building agency with students. Yes, and placing the 6 on the 38, they will also repel. So like this, can't do it. It's just not, no matter how many times you try, it's just not going to go together. Okay, so the other problem that was on there was 52 plus 38. If you want to try some fun strategies, after seeing that we could put some of the ones from 6 onto the 38, maybe now in your head, you can picture a different way of adding, not the traditional algorithm way, but in your head, maybe a number talk, you could find a strategy that is quite seamless. So this lesson, we can learn the meaning of carrying if you're using an algorithm that's more traditional. Any student solution can be considered an algorithm, and how the sim encourages flexible thinking by moving through 10. And of course, there are a lot of different, there are games, students can test themselves. So now what I'd like to do is share with you how to customize a URL, and we're going to share some resources on the website. So one of the things, if you go back to if you have your tabs open, or I can share this link. Actually, I'm going to go to the PhET website. So if you go to phet.colorado.edu, which is in the chat, you're going to land here. So I'll give you a moment to follow with me, as I really want you to know how to do this. This is so important when you're trying to customize a URL, and most teachers don't know they can do this. And even super users, the physics folks who have been using PhET for 20 years, didn't know you could do this. And so this is something I think is really powerful that not very many people know that you can. So hopefully this proves useful. You can click on any of these tiles to get to the simulations that you want, or you can go up to the sim tab and you can filter by here. When you click on, I'm going to click on math and statistics, you're going to see here you have grade level, which you can click on elementary, middle, high, or university. You can see that we're kindergarten through college. You can click on the inclusive features to see which sims have alternative input or camera input, which ones have sound and sonification, voicing, interactive description. Most sims have pan and zoom at this point, and interactive highlights and alt input, but we do have many different inclusive features that we can, that all of our newer sims have most of these. Some of our older sims, we're starting to incorporate those and back build and update those. So one of the sims, you can either sort by newest, it's defaults to newest. You can see this banner up here for new. These are all our newly published math sims, or you can go alphabetical. So if I go alphabetically, I'm going to see that we had Equality Explorer. Here, this is the one we were playing with earlier. If you notice, it defaults to the About page. These right here connect with social media. This is for Google Classroom. If you use it, you can just add it directly to your Google Classroom and embed the sim. This is the download button if you want to download each sim individually, or you can have an embed code if you use PowerPoint or something like that. You can embed the sim. Scrolling to the bottom, we have related sims, as well as down here, we have offline access. This right here will download the whole website. So if you have students that don't have connectivity at home, you could, if they have a Chromebook, for example, try to download the whole website. The only I shouldn't say bad, the only downside to this is that this is not, it doesn't ping our website. So if we publish a new sim or update one, it won't automatically update your desktop app, is what we call that. So on the About page, as you can see, this standards alignment says high school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So we saw that you can use this sim to apply it to not just high schools and middle, but you can also use it in kindergarten and 2nd grade when they're trying to learn zero pairs or try to balance an equation like 3 + what = 5. You will have to create a free account. And the reason why we have accounts is because we want to have a wall between students and teachers. We don't allow student logins because we don't want any privacy issues. And a lot of school districts don't allow websites to be used if student data is collected. So we don't collect any student data. There's no login. There's no any kind of barrier. And you can use the Sims without logins too. But if you want to find the teaching resources and the activities, you will need to create a free login. This PDF, when you are logged in, this PDF shares with you some things that you may not have known that the sim can do. So you can say, I didn't know it could do that, but this, I'm glad I looked at this PDF because now I know. And your students will probably find more. We don't put all the features in here. We usually put the ones that are maybe harder to find. As I said before, these insights into student use come out of the interviews that we did where students may have struggled to find something, but we want them to struggle productively to find it. So these are tips for you if you want to make sure that your students, they're struggling with this. I want to make sure that they want to find balance. So encourage them to find as many as possible. And so here we have on the Solve It screen, we have suggestions for use. Explore proportional relationships, sample challenge prompts. Like I said, if you just want to put a sim in front of your students and give them a prompt or say, hey, you play this game with each other, find as many equations using the objects on the basic screen and then challenge your partner to find a different one. The customization options, this is the URL part that it's very intimidating to look at. It looks very developer-y, it looks very codey, and it is, but it is not as scary as it looks. So these are all live links here. If you don't want to have to remember, these will work for you. Let's say, for example, that you only wanted the students to see the first 2 screens, which are, if I go back up to the sim, which are the apples and fruits and vegetables, and then the one that we played with, and it does not show any of these 3. What you're going to do is you can either click this link down here in the table. These are all the customization options. You can load all the sims in a language. It'll automatically translate. You can turn the audio on. You can mute it. All these things that you can do. Let's say that I only wanted to do this screens 1 and 2. If I go up here, if I don't want to click the link and I click the big play button, if you want all the screens, this is the URL that you give your students, however you get them links to things in your learning management system. This is the URL that you would use. To customize a URL, the URL asks you a question. How do you want to customize me? ? So I put a question mark there. And so then I type, I look in that table and I say, what is the code for doing this? And let's say I only want to see these first 2 screens, these 2 right here. When I say ? How do you want to customize me? ? I say I want to customize you by only showing screens 1 and 2. And I want to customize you to say the initial, I think this is it. I don't know, I might have to look. Initial screen = 2. So you can customize, you can use a lot of different customizations, as many as you want using that ampersand. When I hit enter, you can see that I only see these 2 and I started on the 2nd screen. So you can make sure that they see what you want them to see first. And then none of the other screens are here. So this is one of the important things. This, I don't think you can change, you can translate the sim in real time, but this does not have the second language tab, but you can turn the audio on and off. It's the same as pushing this button down here. Back to the sim page. Here you have pre-made activities ready to go. Once you create your free account, up here in this menu, you'll see my bookmarks, my contributions, if you want to contribute an activity. And so you can see these things here. I have a couple that you won't see, like activity review. But here you have pre-made lessons that you can click on and use right away. Here you can see a preview of the lesson to see if you want to use it or not. You can download all of them or just one of them. If we make it, we often try to put it as a Word or a Google link so that you can customize it to meet your needs as well as a PDF. And then it has just some other things here that you can check out, like a gold star. If I go to my bookmarks or my contributions, if you have some bookmarks, it'll show up here. Anything that you've contributed, you can color code all of the bookmarks. You can color code. You can create a keyword, I think somewhere, maybe not. Over here, oh no, that's me. I thought you could put a keyword, but maybe not. Anyway, you can color code. And so in your pages, you can see this. So you can see all of the activities. And all of our sims have this. When you go to, for example, number play, go back to the website, click on math and statistics, and I click on number play, which is right here. And I see the activities. Here you see lots. Here's family of Mr. 10 that we went through today. My mystery number is the one that puts the 1 and the 2 next to each other to decide if it's actually 3 or 12. So this number addresses the issue that came up earlier. And so any questions about that page so far? Just a couple more things, then I'll hand it back to David. Okay, so in addition to being able to translate in real time in the settings menu, you can also, these don't look like live links, but they are. This is in order of their 2 or 3 digit language code in their language. So for example, Spanish is not S, it's ES for Espanol. So here you have Spanish. Well, I'm in English, so it's going to actually be Spanish here. But if I were in Spanish, it would be ES for that. So these are live links. If I click on one, our translators are volunteers. So if you find that you know a language and you don't find a sim translated, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to have you help us translate some sims that are not translated. These, if it says a PDF, this is the teacher resources, this teacher tips document. And that's what this is here. So somebody has translated that for us. And so that's pretty much our website. Hopefully you remember how to customize a URL because that's really important. And just really one more, reiteration here. When you click on that big play button, this is the URL that you give to your students. This one has the features of, you can auto hear. You can put that up here and you can send that link to your students so that it auto loads. And then
0,
you can hear automatically. If I can
1, 2, 3.
so you can send them that link that's automatically loaded with that here. So again, this is in the document and it tells you what keywords to put at the end of the URL. So
awesome. There's a whole lot there.
Yeah. Oh, one more thing. Yeah, I did want to say this. So you'll hear, like David was saying, app a lot. I just want to make sure that we are free online and the desktop app are free. And you can download the whole website. You can download each sim individually. This we call the desktop app, which is the offline access. We do have a 99-cent mobile app in both the iOS for Android and Apple. We have that for 99 just to offset the cost of the App Store. But if you are a Title I school or CEP eligible, we do have a grant from Verizon that pays for the app and will give all of your students in your entire district the PhET app for free. So if you're interested, contact me and I can get you the information for that. But we have 3 ways to access us: online, desktop, and mobile app. So questions. And yes, thank you for joining us. We'll take
Yeah.
questions here.
Yeah, let's see if any questions come through here on the chat, or if you'd like to raise your hand, we can unmute you and you can chime in here. Got the
You have your, oh, you don't have your email.
lots of ways to connect.
Mhm.
Just a little bit, Tamara, you wanna talk about this, or you want me to?
Sure. I did want to mention, and we probably should have shared that up front too, Kathy, that everything is free to use. And if you do want students to have access to that mobile app, to reach out and connect with you. I believe that a lot of people will have questions. I did just want to share that we will be connecting again with Kathy in May, on May 14th, same time. We'll be sharing that in the follow-up. So that will be more of a focus on grades 3 through 5, so upper elementary, but as you saw today, a lot of opportunities for application across different grade bands. So tell your colleagues and join us again. Also wanted to share that if you're new to the universal screeners for number sense, that we do have an introduction to how 2 districts are using those on April 2nd. That QR code will get you to the registration page if you want to join us to learn more about how districts are implementing those open source assessments in their district, sharing out best practices and sharing out how they're using the assessments. If you haven't already downloaded the assessment guide too, that is a free download from our website, and sharing that URL there.
Put that into the chat as well. Well, lots of learning. So thank you to everyone who came in this evening to join us here today. I'm really looking forward to the 3rd through 5th grade one. We're going to spend time with fractions and some multiplication stuff and some division stuff, and so it's really going to be an excellent opportunity to dig deeper with some of these apps. The fraction stuff you'll want to see. It's just fantastic. I love the fraction stuff. So thank you, Kathy, for the time and for sharing these wonderful sims with everyone here this evening. I think it's really great to get these out. I love helping people to discover these wonderful tools.
Yes,
Amy asked, what's the date on that? The April, I'm sorry, what was it, Camera?
it's May 14th.
May 14th.
And I'll share that too in the follow-up so that you can just register. I also just want to reiterate my thanks to both of you. I know that not only did you spend a lot of time preparing for our presentation today, I loved how interactive it was and how you really felt what students go through as they're learning and having that opportunity to really engage. I feel like we don't provide enough of those opportunities for our young mathematicians to explore and engage without trying to work towards an answer. So it's a wonderful project. So glad that we got to share with you, and thank you for taking us in this deep dive and overview of how your different simulations work.
Yeah, thank you
All
so
right.
much for having me and joining me in this talk. And I appreciate everybody who joined today. And please do reach out if you have questions or need anything. We should probably consolidate these slides. There's my email right there, but you can also just go to phet.colorado.edu and find us there as well. So with that, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and please reach out.
All right. Thanks.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.